take it from me. All of what I know, there beside me, and show your warmth. It's hard to find peace, buried in so deep. I can only hear the word is shouting. All I see is how I could change it all. Find my peace, love I feel. It's time to fall for a new day, or from silence to a new state of mind. Heard a whisper, something said so sweet, quiet as ever.
Let the wave wash over me. Let the wave wash over.
We've got like a strolling troubadour in the middle aisle, which is kind of awesome. I could do that every week, right? Yeah. Good morning. My name is Karen Seymour Ells, and I serve on the board of DuPage Unitarian Universalist Church. I want to welcome everyone to our service this morning and welcome visitors to our open and inclusive community. As Unitarian Universalists, we hold that there are many spiritual paths to truth and meaning, and we support one another as we explore these paths. I would like to especially welcome our guests and welcome again those who have visited us before. Visitors, it is the custom of our congregation to invite you to stand and give your name and where you are from if you are comfortable doing so. Are there any visitors out in the cold today who would like to do that with us? I would have given them, oh, morning. Good morning, John. Kudos to you for coming out this morning. Yes. Nice to see you again. Welcome. I want to welcome everyone visiting. Did you want to say hi too? I'm like speeding along. I'm sorry. Hi, Elizabeth. Good morning. Welcome. I want to welcome everyone visiting today. Please join us after the service for coffee hour. We would love to get to know you better. Our Director of Religious Education, Steve Cooper, Mary Law, I can't see Mary right now, our Congregational Life Coordinator, and all of our members are eager to meet you. There's Mary waving from the back. I will also be present after the service in Creeves Hall to say hello. For those of you who are live streaming via YouTube, please be aware that this morning when we share joys and concerns, the live stream will go blank and it will come back on when Joys and Concerns concludes. Our service can be heard outside the glass doors at the bank should you need to leave for any reason. There are chairs provided for your comfort. Could you please turn off all electronic devices? I'm going to do that when I get back there. Thank you.
We light our chalice this morning for Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves.
Welcome, everyone. I'd like to thank Becky for joining me on this song. Those at first service may have heard this, but we're going to do it again. This song is called Seasons by Chris Cornell. Okay. Summer nights and long warm days, stone as the old moon falls, and the mirror shows another face, another place to hide it all, another place to hide it all, and I'm lost words I'll never find, and I'm left behind. Seasons roll on by, sleeping with the full moon blanket, sand and feathers for my hair, Dreams have never been the answer. Yeah, dreams have never made my bed. Yeah, dreams have never made my bed. And I'm lost
behind.
words I'll never find. And I'm left
Behind.
as the seasons roll on by. Yeah. Woo-hoo. Now I want to fly above the storm, but another day in the way, yeah. And the naked ground is cold as hell. Yeah, the naked ground reminds me. And the naked ground reminds me that I'm lost.
Behind.
Words I'll never find. And I'm left
Behind.
as the seasons roll on by. If I should be short on words, long on things to say, would you crawl into my world and take my words away? If I should be beside myself and not even stay. And I'm lost.
Behind.
Words I'll never find. And I'm left
Behind.
as the seasons roll on by.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Dr. Miriam Renault. I am the community minister of this congregation, and I will be preaching this morning. It's lovely to be back in the pulpit. As community minister, I'm generally only preach a couple of times a year, so I'm happy to be back, and we'll be back again in April during this church year. I wanted to thank Tom and Becky for stepping in. Bonnie is not feeling well today, so we're lucky that she's here at all. But they stepped in to play the prelude. That's why there's been a little change from the order of service this morning. So welcome. Welcome to this place of possibility. This is love's hearth, the home of hope, a refuge for minds in search of truth, unfolding, ever beautiful, ever strange. Here, compassion is our shelter, freedom our protection from the storms of bigotry and hate. In this abode, may we find comfort and courage. Here, may our sight become vision to see the unseen, to glimpse the good that is yet to be.
It is time to gather. And this is the time for all of us to hear a message or learn a lesson together. Today is our last Sunday for our theme of possibility and what it means to be a people of possibility. And today, Reverend Miriam will be talking about the possibility of being wrong, or being wrong with grace. Humility. Humility comes out of love and from learning. Have you ever watched a candle burn? The fire is alive. Watch it. It moves. It flickers. It dances like the wind. It changes with every breath of air. Fire is alive. It is born. It grows. And it dies. But fire is special. It can live again and again. People have always known that fire was special. Long, long ago, before people had made matches or candles, or even made houses, people knew that fire was special. There was the great fire in the sky, the sun, which made the earth warm and made night into day. And there were the smaller fires that people made, fires that cooked their food and kept them warm and brought them light. People honored the fires because fire was special. Fire was more than human. Fire has power. It can create and it can destroy. It can bring light and it can burn. Fire can be wonderful and fire can be terrible. We have to be careful with fire. And so people thought that fire was something sacred and holy. Some people even worshiped fire and said that the fire was a deity, like a goddess or a god. But other people said that fire wasn't a deity, but it just meant that there was a deity present. No matter what they believed, people all over the world gave fire a special place in their religions. They had fires in their homes, of course, to cook food and to keep warm, but they also had sacred fires in their temples. They set sacred lamps on their altars, and they lit sacred bonfires outside on the hilltops and in the groves. They placed sacred torches near the graves of those who died. We still do that today, because in Washington, D.C., near the tomb of the unknown soldier, burns an eternal flame that never goes out. In churches at Christmas time, many Christians light 4 candles on the Advent wreath. During the 8 days of Hanukkah, Jews light the 8 candles of the menorah. At Diwali, Hindus set small lamps all around the house. And when Unitarian Universalists gather, we light a chalice. This is our sacred fire. The flame gives us light and warmth, just like all fires. It is also a symbol, something that we use to represent the light of learning. The chalice is a symbol too. We use it to hold the flame. The chalice, or the circle of the chalice, helps keep the fire small. It gives us light so we can see all the different things in the universe, even the invisible ones, because the Unitarian Universalist flame is a light of learning. The circle of our family keeps us warm, both our family at home and our Unitarian Universalist family. We help each other and we take care of each other because that's what families are supposed to do. and we invite everyone to come be a part of our family, because the Unitarian Universalist chalice is a chalice of love. Beginning today, a household will take our chalice of love and learning home with them. Today, the Rubin family is returning our chalice after being in their home for a week, so that another household can take the chalice home with them. A sign-up sheet is located on the buffet cabinet underneath the video monitor in Creeves Hall, so that you may sign up and be a part of our church that enjoys the light of learning and love in your homes. So each week, the chalice will travel from one home to the next, where it will be cherished. And several households have already taken it home from the Youth Religious Education Committee just to test it to make sure it's ready to go to your home. But they have also left entries in the journal so that you can read about their experience. You will find our sacred traveling chalice box. In the box, a homemade, handmade, one-of-a-kind chalice specifically for our church. And there will be instructions, a special cloth, battery-operated candles, an actual wax candle, pen, a journal, and chalice lighting readings, along with a book titled A Cup of Light, and it's all about the Flaming Chalice by Pamela Baxter. So the purpose of our Traveling Chalice program is to deepen our understanding of one of our most familiar Unitarian Universalist symbols. The light of the chalice connects us all together and is a sacred element of our beloved community. The chalice may also be used as a symbol of hope when one is feeling or experiencing a sense of darkness. You will learn about its history and how it brings people together through learning and love. So each week, a household, not just those with children, will take home the traveling chalice, which will be inside a special carrier. Now, you may want to use the chalice during your meals or family meetings or as a bedtime ritual. Choose a reading from the materials provided or make your own. And take a photo of the chalice and post it on the church Facebook coffee hour page. And send it to me so that we can publicize it also. So is your chalice on the dining room table? Is it on the mantle? Is it next to a bedside table? Record your experience in the included journal. Think about how did the chalice enrich your experience? In what ways was the chalice used? And if you created your own reading, you may share it in the journal. And then the following Sunday, you bring the carrier with all of its contents back to church, place it on the buffet under the video monitor in Creeves Hall so that the next household may use it. We are looking forward to seeing the chalice in your home. Let's sing the children to class. Please stand in body or spirit and join in singing hymn number 349, We Gather Together. The words will be projected.
Praise
Now is the time in our service that we set aside for those joys and concerns that travel with us during the week. If you have a joy or concern that you would like to share from your personal life, we now invite you forward to share it with this, your beloved community. To come in those joys and concerns expressed and those unexpressed. I now invite you into a time of meditation and contemplation. We're going to enjoy some beautiful music and a video. And this is a time for us to consider the joys and concerns shared and how we as a community embrace each other and how we might embrace each other even more fully.
The Lord is my shepherd. I have all I need. She makes me lie down in green meadows beside sets a table before me in the presence of my foes. She anoints my head with oil, and my cup overflows. Surely goodness and kindness will follow me all the days of my life, and I will live in her house forever, forever and ever. Glory be to our Mother and Daughter and to the Holy of Holies, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end.
Today's reading is a poem called Forgiveness by Henry Carlyle. I'd like to turn the other cheek, the one I haven't shaved yet, but something stops me like a jab to the solar plexus, a blow to the immense, unmissable cuttlefish of my ego that scuttles backwards, spewing out clouds of ink, self-consoling platitudes like she wasn't worth it, or I'm better off without her, which of course do not console because they are platitudes. And time's slow ambulance, drawn by a brace of snails, arrives too late to do anything but remind us that this was the scene of an accident, long after the damage has been swept away. I've divided my sermon this morning into two parts. First is about asking for forgiveness, and the second part is about forgiving. So they're the two aspects of forgiveness, one where we're asking for the forgiveness, and the other on the receiving end, or perhaps struggling with forgiving someone. To ask for forgiveness is an act of profound humility. We know we did something wrong. We know we caused harm. We know we ought to apologize. We know we should try to be and do better. We know we should. But something stops us. Something that shoves us back like a giant jab to the solar plexus. Something that whacks the immense, unmissable cuttlefish of our ego. Instead of going deep to find moral courage, we are sometimes inclined to scuttle away under the cover of protective clouds of black ink. Well, what stops us from apologizing and asking for forgiveness? There are so many reasons. We're embarrassed, or it's too painful to think about what happened, to reflect on past events and consider our role in the bad things that happened. Or we hope that if we push these events to the back of our minds, everyone will do the same and there will be no more conversation about it. Or we tell ourselves that what we did wasn't the big deal that everyone is making it out to be. All those people are just making a mountain out of a molehill. What is their problem? Or we tell ourselves that the people we harm don't really matter, like in the poem. Or we tell ourselves that we're better off without them, good riddance. Or we remind ourselves of our many good deeds, and we do the math. Does one bad deed matter in the larger scheme of our many good deeds? Or we're afraid that the person to whom we should apologize will refuse our apology, so we stay away and say nothing. There are costs to apologizing and asking for forgiveness, especially given how much harm we've caused. It can be very painful. The cost can be very steep. Sure, our conscience bothers us, but if we want the person we've harmed to forgive us, we have to give them good reasons to do so. First, we have to own up to the fact that we are the ones who were responsible for the harm. And then we have to say that we know what we did was wrong, and we have to admit that, yes, we did a terrible thing here. And then we have to express regret, hopefully heartfelt, otherwise we'll appear insincere, regret at whatever it was that we did. And then we have to say that we are willing to become different people. We have to show contrition. We essentially have to say, we want to change from the person who did this great wrong into a person who could never be capable of doing this sort of thing again. So this is all may feel very terrifying, especially if the harm we did was really horrendous. Just feels like too much to handle. So in fact, as I was preparing this sermon, I searched far and wide for poems about forgiveness. I searched the internet. I searched the books of poetry on my bookshelf. I searched the internet again. There's so many poems, and yet so few are about forgiveness. I finally did find the one that I read earlier. And I eventually asked my daughter, who is a poem, why are there so few poems about forgiveness? She said, well, you can't, of course you can't find poems about forgiveness. Forgiveness, she said. Forgiveness is too hard. Though poets don't seem to like to write about forgiveness, we find plenty of passages about forgiveness in the Hebrew and Christian Bibles. So let's take a look at a few passages from Psalm 51, which is one of the great psalms of forgiveness in both scriptures. The English version that I'm going to be reading comes from a traditional Jewish translation, because there's usually a difference. So this is the third verse through 6. Be gracious to me, God, with your kindness. With great compassion, erase my crimes. Completely wash away my iniquities and make me pure despite my sins. Because my crimes I acknowledge and my sins haunt me endlessly. Before you and you alone I sinned. I did evil in your eyes, so that your words will be justified, so that you will be right in your verdict. The entire Bible, whether the Jewish or Christian Bible, treats wrongdoing as the major cause of rupture in the relationship between human beings and God. In both Bibles, God is stern, but also cares deeply for creation and is sometimes, not always, mercifully disposed towards honest repentance or change of ways. But have you ever had the sense that God, if you believe in God, forgave you for a terrible wrong, but you felt yourself unforgiven or were unforgiven by the person that you wronged? It may be because God is not usually depicted or believed to be like an ordinary human being. God does not have to go through a process of overcoming anger or resentment. God can see into your soul, so God does not have to work through doubts over whether your apologies and your promises to do better are genuine. And God has the ability to cancel or obliterate sin. But in human-to-human forgiveness, the reality of the offense persists into the present, neither abolished nor forgotten. And although God may be mercifully disposed toward honest repentance, people, quite frankly, aren't always as mercifully disposed. They may never be willing to repair their relationship with you, however sincere your remorse or your attempts to make amends and transform yourself into a morally improved version. And so to apologize and ask for forgiveness takes courage. We're to look into the face of the person we've harmed and admit what we did. As we look for the courage to apologize, may love be our guide. As we find a sincere desire to mend a broken relationship by saying we're sorry, may love be our guide. As we try to find a way to feel deep in our hearts the depth of the hurt we've caused someone else, may love be our guide. And as we embark on a journey of self-reform, though we know this will not come easily, if at all, may love guide us. So in that spirit, let us sing together hymn 131, Love Will Guide Us, and you can remain seated for this. Okay, now I'm going to switch my attention from the challenges of asking for forgiveness to the challenges of forgiving someone else. We usually take for granted that forgiveness takes place between persons. It may surprise you that this is a quite recent and culturally dependent understanding, as are any understandings of forgiveness. So the 4 steps I laid out for you in part 1, which are common in this culture when we are asking for forgiveness, would not be the steps that we might go through if we were living in Japan. They would be inappropriate, or in some other culture. And if we trace human history, we see also that understandings of forgiveness have changed over time. So for example, the ancient Greeks and Romans did not regard forgiveness in the way that we use this term today. And I bring this up because I'm going to challenge you a little bit to reflect on what forgiveness means to you, and to offer that there might be other ways to think of forgiveness. So for the ancient Greeks, remorse and repentance played no role in the appeasement of anger and in the letting go of the desire for revenge. And their primary focus was on the appeasement of anger and the letting go of a desire for revenge, because when someone's harmed us, we often not only feel very hurt, but we want to get back at the person who did this to us. The notion of remorse and repentance is an innovation that we see hinted at in the Bible. So you saw that in Psalm 51. And it was then further developed by Christian thinkers. In both the Hebrew Bible and the Christian scriptures, it is most often God who forgives and who demands repentance and contrition. There are stories of people forgiving each other, but they are rare and ambiguous enough to have given rise to different interpretations. Christian innovations of personal remorse, repentance, and contrition did not even reach the form of forgiveness that we take for granted today until it was coupled with the modern concept of the self that was hammered out by Enlightenment philosophers. It was these philosophers who forged this understanding of the self as almost something separate from us, something that we were capable of molding and shaping. So that made it possible for us to come to this notion of inner reform, of converting the self from a self capable of doing wrong to a new self incapable of doing so. This understanding of forgiveness as a purely individual matter is commonplace in the Western world today, in the modern world. But many understandings of forgiveness are possible. And I hope that during the social hour, you will actually ask each other about your understandings of forgiveness. I think it would be give rise to lovely conversations and to discovering that there are other ways of dealing with forgiveness that you may not have thought of. I personally think that the ancient Greeks were onto something when they focused not on the act of asking or granting forgiveness, but on reducing anger in order to restore the possibility of being in relationship with either a single person or with other people in general. That's because anger about something someone did to you doesn't usually just affect your relationship with that person, but it actually tends to bleed over into other areas of life and into other relationships. In his second book on rhetoric, Aristotle provides the most extensive analysis of emotions that has survived from his time. The first emotion he explored at length was anger, so it starts with anger. After the section on anger, he wrote a section on calmness, or calming down, which for him was the emotion opposed to anger. Now, many people don't consider calmness an emotion, but when calmness is our response to the behavior of people who cause us pain, then I think we might agree with Aristotle that the activity of eliminating anger and calming down counts as an emotion. In other words, some sort of self-work, some internal work to counteract anger and that often desire for vengeance that we feel as the path forward when dealing with an injury, a hurt, a harm that someone's done to us. I think this work of internal change is especially important if the person who's harmed us is dead. So we can't actually have a conversation with them about what happened. They're not going to ask us for forgiveness. And how we would extend forgiveness to them isn't clear. It's especially important to also if the person who harmed us just shows no remorse or does not seek our forgiveness. So whether the offender is present, alive, asking for forgiveness, doesn't matter as much if our primary focus is to reduce our own personal anger and to working on restoring our faith in relationships, and that they can be good and healthy and take care of us so that we might continue to be in the world and part of the world. And I think we can do this. I think that forgiveness can be the name that we give to that intentional effort that we make to come to terms with what happened and the internal work that we undertake to drive down what we might sometimes call rage and the desire for revenge. So I would like to ask you now to take a minute to reflect on your life and identify a person who intentionally did you wrong. It might be someone who's died, might be someone who you might never meet again, might be someone who you encountered this past week. But just think of one person who did you wrong and who you would like to forgive or perhaps have forgiven. So now that you've thought of a particular person and hold them in your mind, someone who's harmed you, I'm going to invite you to join me in a responsive reading. And as we go through this reading together, I'm going to invite you to pay attention to your physical and emotional reactions as we move through that reading. These reactions could be a knot in your stomach, tension in your shoulders, feelings of anger, tightening of your fists, resistance to the entire exercise, or numbness. So don't push any of these reactions and feelings away. Just note them without judgment. They're your feelings, they're your reactions. So just pay attention to them. They're a part of who you are at the moment. All right, so we're going to have a slide of the responsive reading. I'm going to read the one, and please read with me the many. Letting go of anger when someone has hurt us may be the hardest thing we will ever do. The one who did us great harm may not ask for compassion, nor deserve it. Why then might we choose to be reconciled with what happened? Because restoring relationships heals many hearts. Because the alternative could be endless bitterness and sorrow. Letting go of anger may be the hardest thing we will ever do. And may that first step lead to the next and the next until we find peace again. The peace not past our understanding. In the spirit of peace not past our understanding, please join me in singing hymn number 164, The Peace Not Past Our Understanding. And please remain seated As we sing, the offering plate will at some point be handed to you. We're going to take the offering, and this will give you the opportunity to show your gratitude and support for this community, which is so precious to us. Bonnie's going to go through this hymn once before we start to sing. Spirit of life, Spirit of love, we have gathered under the banner of a shared faith. We are born of a welcoming grace that extends and receives love. We are touched by the ways we have fallen short of who we strive to be. And we are here reborn, forged by greater courage. Let us move from this place encouraged and refreshed for the journey ahead. And now I invite you to stand and greet your neighbors and to please continue our conversation about forgiveness in the social hall.
Let the wave wash over